Hello guys, this is Dark Fox Sage 2 and we are back with our new fanfic, which is what if Sasuke brought Naruto with him to Orochimaru after he fainted in First Valley Battle Part 2. And if you enjoy this fanfic, then please press the like button and please subscribe to the channel. It motivates me to upload more fanfic like these for you all. Now let's start the fanfiction. This is amazing, Ero Sennin. Naruto exclaimed. I watched as he all but submerged his face into the steaming bowl of beef ramen in front of him, slurping noisily and even licking fallen food up off the table. Do you even know the meaning of grace? Sasuke asked. What? Naruto asked, licking all around his lips. I was starving. Literally starving, too. I joked. You guys look like you've seen death. We did, Naruto said, tilting the bowl slightly. He locked us up in a dungeon for 47 whole chalk lines. Chalk lines? The red-haired girl sitting on Sasuke's other side rolled her eyes. He means 6 weeks, she replied. It was the first words she'd said the entire time, so I turned my interest to her. And may I ask how you got involved in all this? She's Sasuke's girlfriend, Naruto replied offhandedly, as he bent his head backwards and dropped the rest of the food into his mouth. Karen immediately reached around Sasuke and shoved him as he was slurping, causing him almost to choke. That's a total lie. Sasuke and I are nothing like, she exclaimed. I smiled, watching as she glanced fervently at Sasuke, most likely trying to discern whether or not he was suspicious of her blatant lie, but he was looking at Naruto. Strangely, even though neither of them were speaking, they made movements toward each other like they were. After Naruto said what he did, Sasuke immediately looked at him, and Naruto, while eating, smirked, and then Sasuke rolled his eyes and crossed his arms and Naruto began to snicker, and an irritated expression passed over Sasuke's face as he narrowed his eyes at him. That response prompted Naruto to sigh and then a smug look replaced Sasuke's frown. Were they stuck in that dungeon so long, they were able to create some kind of silent code between themselves. I would have continued trying to figure it out, but a waitress walked by, swishing her hips in such a way that immediately stole my gaze. Hey, Ero Sennin. My eyes shot away from the waitress and I gave him a peeved look. I almost forgot how loud you are. What? I asked. She's also my distant cousin. He told me. Then he snapped his fingers. And that reminds me, have you ever met anyone else from the Uzumaki clan? I glanced at the girl they called Karen, who averted her eyes from him. So, you're finally curious about your history, huh, Naruto? No, I said, shaking my head. If my memory serves me correctly, most of them went extinct only a little while after the Senju clan did. You and her are the only ones I've ever gotten the fortune to meet. Well, exempting 2 others. A little red-haired boy with an interesting eye prowess. But that person is most likely dead anyway. And a woman who just so happens to be your mother. But she, too, is gone. Naruto's gaze drifted down to the table as he pushed his third empty bowl of ramen away. I smiled at him. I thought you'd be the last person feeling like a fish out of water. I said, aren't you the same person who just fought for your best friend and won? Naruto raised his head, turning to Sasuke and grinned, throwing his arm around his shoulders. I sure did, he exclaimed as Sasuke tried to push him away. Stop touching me. Well, I said, placing my hands on the table. We have a couple miles of walking ahead of us. Let's get an early start back to Konoha. But as I began to stand, I realized that none of them moved. They didn't even attempt to. I suspected as much. My gaze dropped upon Sasuke, who had closed his eyes and crossed his arms. Sasuke willingly left the village to chase after his ambition. It'd be completely out of his character for him to return. I looked to Naruto, who was the only one who returned my gaze. Even if Naruto truly is Sasuke's best friend in some sick, twisted way, there's no way Sasuke would let Naruto stand in the way of his ambitions. I thought of Orochimaru. And there's also no way that man would allow anything to stand in the way of his ambitions, namely an heir for his insane immortality projects. Ero Sennin, Naruto began, fingers pressing hard against the glass table. We can't go back to Konoha right now. Something incredibly unforeseen must have happened. The real question is it a blessing or a curse? I sat back down. Right, I said, patting the waitress next to me on the bottom. Can you bring another round of sake to this table? She batted my hand away playfully. Coming right up, she said seductively. I grinned, turning to watch her sashay away. What's so special about this guy, anyway? Asked the girl. Isn't he just a common lecher? Yup, Naruto exclaimed. He's the absolute worst. I pulled my eyes away from the hips and thighs gathered around the alcohol bar and turned to the unimpressed children in front of me. Hey, I exclaimed. Who's the worst, paying for your meals? Their dull expressions didn't change. I crossed my arms, deciding to go for the parental approach. Besides, you'll understand when you're older. I said. It's an adult thing. Oh please. The girl muttered. Sasuke tapped his chopsticks on the table and tilted his head toward Naruto. Then, he smirked at the same time Naruto cupped a hand to his mouth and struggled to hold back laughter. They're doing it again. Excuse me, here is your extra sake. The woman said, walking up. I slowly took my eyes off Naruto, who sat directly in front of me in the outer part of the booth, and nodded, reaching to take my cup from the waitress. As I reached, my hand extended a bit further, pushing the cup off the tray. It topped over, crashing down onto Naruto's hand where it shattered. Ow! Naruto exclaimed, pulling his right hand back. My eyes flicked over to Sasuke as his right hand balled into a fist, and almost in complete unison, they both reached over with their left hand and massaged a spot on the back of their hands. But in Naruto's case, there was actually a piece of glass sticking up there where in Sasuke's there wasn't. And this, too, is strange. Oh, my apologies, sir, the woman exclaimed. Oh, it's my faulty fingers, I declared, laughing loudly. Might have had a bit too much to drink. A bit? Wasn't that your third one already? Karen muttered. Stop injuring yourself so often, Sasuke said to Naruto in a way that, strangely, sounded as if he were complaining. Naruto succeeded in removing the piece of glass from the back of his hand and turned his hand over, pretending to attempt to stab it into his palm. As Sasuke reacted by instinctively closing his hand, as someone who was about to be injured might do, I noticed something. Is that a curse seal on Naruto's hand? I'll get you a new drink and bandages for the boy straight away, the waitress offered after succeeding in cleaning up the mess. Don't worry about it, I told her. I shouldn't be drinking anymore, and the boy's a ninja. He can handle himself. Yup, Naruto exclaimed, lifting his hand to point at his headband but poked his forehead instead. He frowned, rubbing his head and sighing, and the woman walked away. I smiled, reaching into my pocket, looking for these. Naruto's face lit up as two navy blue headbands dangled in front of his face. You got 'em, he exclaimed, reaching. I pulled my hand back, putting them back in my robes. First, you have to answer some questions. Naruto reseated himself, shrugging. Sure, what you got? Obviously, he wants to know of Orochimaru's whereabouts so he can catch him, Karen said. One for the bingo books. Or else, he wants to stall us until reinforcements can get here to force us back to Konoha, Sasuke said in monotone. It's obvious his mission was one to retrieve us both. Naruto said nothing, gazing at me head on. I smiled, leaning back in the chair. You're both wrong, actually, I said. I'm not interested in bringing Orochimaru anywhere. I gave up on that man a long time ago. Karen squinted her eyes at me and looked away. And as for Konoha, I don't necessarily answer to the village. They didn't send me on any sort of retrieval mission. Sasuke gave me a look as if he didn't believe me. Then what were you doing patrolling Orochimaru's hideouts? He asked me. I sensed a powerful presence peek in that general area a couple of days ago. Karen's eyes shifted back to mine, as though she were truly listening. I figured it was this enemy organization I've been trying to track, the Akatsuki. I said. So when I ran into Danzo's Anbu from Konoha's underground that were on a mission to retrieve Naruto, I told them to go back, thinking it would be dangerous for them. So, in short, no one else knows we're here. Sasuke asked. Right. I told him. I could see him relaxing enormously. That must be perfect for someone like you who wants to stay hidden, huh, Sasuke? Naruto frowned for some reason. But, wait, he said. Why was Konoha only looking for me? Shouldn't Sasuke be? He is important. Just not as important. I grew serious, continuing before anyone got the change to intercept me. As you know, Naruto, you're of militaristic importance to the village. Your absence from Konoha puts the village in danger of attack every single day. The entire table grew silent. Sasuke's head tilted toward Naruto as Naruto glanced at him periodically, shrugging a couple times. You never told me that. I heard Sasuke whisper to him. It confirms it. Somehow, they've created a path of non-verbal communication. And not to mention the Akatsuki organization has the lookout for you as well. I reminded them. Being outside of the village unaccompanied is actually more dangerous than if you would have just stayed with Orochimaru. Sasuke balled his fists and frowned. I never said that was why I wanted to help you. Naruto whispered. It has nothing to do with him or the Akatsuki. I recalled the trap I set up with the glass of sake. But not just communication. It must be some kind of life link. Is it originating from that mark on Naruto? In any case, Naruto, you have to go back whether you want or not. I told him. But, he protested. What about that girl that you liked so much? What was her name? Samoa, Sonoko. Sakura. He corrected. Yeah, what about her? He paused, looking down at the table. If you keep her waiting long enough, there's no guarantee she'll be there when you get back, you know. I said airily. Most of the reason I had chosen to say that was to gauge his response. But half of it was true. I knew far too well about keeping a female waiting and returning home to find the girl I left dead and gone and replaced with a woman that had far too much baggage to carry hers and mine, too. If Naruto really cares for that girl, this should be a fine test. He frowned, seeming to really struggle within himself for the answer, and then one glance to Sasuke solved all of that uncertainty. Sakura's strong, he told me. We don't have to worry about her. Weren't you the same person screaming about becoming Hokage? I reminded him, beginning to chuckle. That gambling addict Tsunade's never going to let me live it down if you don't relieve her of her position one day. He shook his head again, not even needing to look to Sasuke this time. I can't become Hokage yet. Not if I can't even save one friend. So this proves it. I shrugged. Well, if it's more important than a woman and your life's goal, then I suppose it can't be helped. I stood up. Come on, let's find a place to stay tonight. Naruto fist pumped. Yeah, so, there's currently something more important to Naruto than bringing Sasuke back. Does it have something to do with this strange jutsu they created together? Have a good night, sir. The women called after me. I smiled, pausing to ask them a few honest questions circulating around what they were doing that night until I was literally yanked away from the eatery by Naruto. Alright, I shouted at him. You'd think you would be happy if I found a wife. You don't want a wife. Naruto complained. You just want someone to sleep in bed with. The eyes of the people standing around us widened and I smacked him in the back of the head. Could you be any louder? I asked him. Not any louder than this. He said. Then he cupped his hands around his mouth. Hey, everybody, this old guy here is a purr. I grabbed him around the neck, pressing my knuckles into his skull. Do you want me to break every bone in your body? I asked him. Do you? He burst into laughter and shoved against me. I suspected he was trying to wriggle out of my arms, so I was surprised when he turned around and hugged me around the waist. Hey, This kid. Then, just as quickly as he did, he turned around and ran, catching up to Sasuke, who was already waiting by the exit, and jumped onto his back. Do you want me to die? He grumbled, but he caught Naruto instead of tossing him off, allowing him to piggyback him, if only momentarily. Could their friendship actually be genuine? But my brain immediately disavowed that thought. There's something going on here. And it's clearly tying Sasuke's hands. The moment I discover whatever it is and break it, he'll be long gone. That much is obvious. I already knew how I wanted to go about figuring out what was going on. First, I needed to discover whether or not the Akatsuki had anything to do with what was happening. It didn't take long to find a child-friendly inn that had 2 vacant rooms. Karen insisted on 2 vacant rooms, and then when I pointed out that would mean she would be the one sleeping alone, she got all nervous. Well, I never said I wouldn't want to sleep with Sasuke. Not that I do. Just that, how about you sleep in the room alone? And when I asked Naruto if he really wanted to spend the entire night listening to that, he shrugged and said, I have to sleep in bed with Sasuke. And then when I gave them both the obvious dazed and confused look, Sasuke slid his hands into his pockets and replied, It's just the way it is, now. What the hell did Orochimaru do to them? I didn't get any leads until we all met up in the springs connected to the inn later that night for them all to have a bath. Just my luck, the inn actually has co-ed bathing and... Karen's eyes flicked to mine grumpily from the shadows where she lurked, refusing to remove her towel. Quote. The only female here is a flat-chested child. What did you say? I grinned. Nothing. Nothing. I said airily, waiting until she looked away so I could continue glaring. The water's fine, Karen. Naruto told her, as he dipped a toe in. Come on. No, she replied tersely. But we haven't bathed in weeks. Her face suddenly flushed red. You probably haven't, but I did. Naruto gave her a disbelieving look, pulled his towel off and jumped in so ungracefully a wave of water picked up and slapped Sasuke in the face. Sasuke groaned, mumbling something inaudibly, and chose to sit down on a stool near me. What was bathing like over there anyway? I asked. It was awful, Naruto exclaimed. It couldn't have been that bad. I protested. But no one said anything. It seemed like it was a unanimous agreement that just walking around with dirt and grime stuck to you for ages was somehow the better choice. I looked over at Sasuke, who watched Naruto disinterestedly as he scrubbed his hair. Sasuke, I said to him. He glanced up at me. So, how does it feel being a free man? I asked him, smirking. Safe from ol' Snake Boy's clutches. He didn't reply. Instead his eyes fell away from mine, lining the bath rim. I'd expect you to be jumping for joy, right? Kind of how Naruto is doing. He remained silent, wanting to get back to Konoha as fast as possible. Something like that, right? He flicked his towel between his fingers. That's right, he finally said. My smile disappeared. No, that's wrong, isn't it? I asked. Completely wrong. He looked back up at me. Because you're still the same boy who sought Orochimaru out himself. The same boy who valued power more than he valued his comrades. I reached into my clothes onto floor, and pulled out his headband, still shining silver from when Kakashi had given them to me. I couldn't get there in time. And now, both of them are missing. The same boy who resolved to murder a kid that considered him his closest friend for the sake of all this. I tapped his headband against his thigh. So, there's no way you could actually be happy about being stuck with him now. He stared down at it. No, there's something else you have hidden up your sleeve. Something that you're getting out of this. I said to him, and you're not fooling me. Sitting around here playing best friend, for Naruto's sake. So, tell me, right now, what are you planning? And how did you get Naruto to give up everything he cares about, even becoming Hokage, for your own twisted purpose? I didn't do anything to him. Sasuke mumbled. If anything, it's what he's done to me. And does that upset you? Yes, he replied, fingers curling around the headband. And that makes you want to get rid of him. I absolved. He paused, then smirked, looking up at me. Maybe it does, he said. And does that make you want to get rid of me? Yes, I responded seriously. Yes, it does. HMPH, was all he said. You didn't tell me what you're both planning. We aren't planning anything, he said, eyes drifting to Naruto. There's something I know I must do. Naruto has nothing to do with that. Take him back to Konoha if you must. Are you sure about that? Separating yourself from him? I asked him. Won't that do more harm to both of you than good? I don't know what you're talking about. He said immediately. Aren't you the same boy who said it couldn't be helped to sleep in bed with him tonight? Surely, you only said that because there's some kind of drawback to even being slightly distant from Naruto. Am I correct? His eyes flicked back over to me. We stared at each other. He opened his mouth slowly. I don't remember saying that, he said, face bold as he lied. Oh, really? You don't? I asked. Then I smiled. Maybe this will refresh your memory. I looked up at Naruto and snapped my fingers. Hey, Naruto, I called. Show me one of those water back flips you like doing so much. Naruto immediately fist pumped. Definitely, he exclaimed, grinning, as he dove backward. Just like I expected, he didn't even take a millisecond to stop and notice just how close he was to the rim of the pool. His head crashed hard into the side, sounding like it could have knocked him clean out, but my eyes weren't on him. Sasuke gritted his teeth, both hands flying up to the center of his head where he rubbed back and forth sorely. Damn it, Naruto, watch where you're going, you stupid, but then he paused, realizing how firmly I'd caught him in a trap. He stared at me, I stared at him, and then he smirked, allowing himself to relax, and leaned back, crossing his arms. You actually happen to be smarter than you look. He appraised me. Well, I wouldn't call myself smart, I said, but then I sneered. However, it is in a ninja's favor to be a likable person with a lot of connections. Something you haven't seemed to have mastered well. He sighed. So, what? You know that we're mentally connected. He confirms it. And clearly it wasn't something you planned. Why would you ever want to be mentally connected to Naruto, right? I asked sarcastically. He continued looking at the headband in his hand. And I can't see why Orochimaru did it either. So who did? Was it the Akatsuki? He did it himself, Sasuke said. But he's such an idiot, he doesn't remember how. That, I did not expect. Is it a jutsu? If so, there's no way Naruto could create a mind-reading jutsu. Even Sasuke, the prodigy he is, would be way out of his league. Then suddenly, I remembered what he'd asked me. About that clan. The Uzukamis. Its seal. I said, snapping my fingers and remembering the mark on his palm. Then, as I looked at Sasuke, I noticed the mark on his shoulder. I grabbed his neck, moving his head to the side so I could see it. The symbol is the same, I observed. He turned around then. What? The same? Since when? Naruto's sealing heritage is finally rearing its head. The way this feels. Even stronger than the 8 trigram one holding down the 9 tails. If he truly did it, he might be a prodigy after all. Naruto paddled through the water, wading toward us. But wait, if it wasn't the Akatsuki who was around there, then what was that ferocious chakra? Naruto's palms slapped against the floor in front of us and he pulled his bare body out of the water. You're still dry, Sasuke. He pointed out. How do you expect to get clean? I'll go in when I'm ready. He mumbled. Unless. Boys. I said. Naruto had his hands on Sasuke's shoulders, 5 seconds away from shoving him in when they both stopped and looked at me. Go out onto the water and need chakra. Naruto gave me a confused look while Sasuke, surprisingly, stood up unquestioningly and walked out on top of the water. Naruto, seeing his attitude, decided to save questions for later and just obey. Their feet slapped against the surface of the water, making small ripples as they assembled next to each other and put their hands together. Gross! Karen exclaimed. Put your towel back on, idiot. Luckily, his towel was floating right around his feet, so before they began he picked it up. All right, fine, he shouted, exasperatedly. As much as you can. I said, getting up off the stool to stand directly in front of them. As much as you can possibly hold. Naruto grinned. I'm gonna blast the cap off this place. If I don't blast it off first. Sasuke replied. I could see it clearly in my eyes, the amount they were both gathering. Karen leaned forward where she was sitting and adjusted her glasses. With the way her eyes were narrowing, I had a feeling about her. She must be a censor. That means, for this exercise, she's going to come in handy. The water around Sasuke began spraying up, rotating around him and raising almost all the way past his waist. That amount of chakra that kid has is almost scary. Even for an Uchiha. The water around Naruto rose only slightly, like it was bubbling, but I could see the chakra he was pulling out was a lot, he just didn't have any control over it, and most of it was going wasted and unused. Though, as a Jinchuriki and someone of Uzumaki descent, he doesn't have to worry much about chakra expenditure. Just as I thought that, the small amount of chakra surrounding him was suddenly accompanied by something else, something lethal. It spilled into his chakra, mixing until it became compact, and when Naruto got a hold of it, he had no problem controlling it. It expelled, bursting out of him and almost perfectly matching the level of chakra Sasuke was expelling. That's surely the chakra of the Kyuubi within him. But how is he able to control it so easily now? Did he tame that beast at some time? But with them both expelling their enormous forces, I didn't have much time to ponder that. When I ran into Kakashi coming back from the final valley holding the two headbands, he told me of the enormous chakra coming from that region. It was them, he had said. Those boys are really something else. Their chakra combined was almost just as large as Madara Uchiha when he was in his prime. But the chakra I'd felt coming toward Orochimaru's hideout was more akin to Madara Uchiha and Hashirama Senju's chakras combined. I was right then. There's no way any kind of seal Naruto created could have done that. I expelled a huge breath. It was a close call though. I was thinking he'd replicated that seal. The seal of legend. But no. They're just strong boys is all. Alright, I said, raising my arm. You guys can. But I cut myself off. Karen was standing up, walking toward them. You have to stop it. She said, shaking her head. What? Stop them. Stop them right now. She ordered me. That thing inside Naruto. It's going to mix with Sasuke's. But before she could finish her sentence, it was like the room imploded, the walls caved in and the ceiling cracked. Another long crack burst up from the ground, running right between my feet. Wait, I can feel it now. Something is happening. It was like their chakra was stretching, elongating and growing larger. At first I didn't think anything of it, but it was almost like a fire. Two fires burning right next to each other, and then turning, noticing each other and deciding instead to become one. Suddenly, there was a chi-chi sound. And even though I would have categorized it as a chidori, Sasuke wasn't performing the jutsu. Lightning was visibly flickering all around, but it was like it was coming from within them, wrapping around their respective hands like gloves and periodically connecting them. I could feel their chakra warping, folding into each other and mixing, and then, right before it fully mixed, it seemed like it was going to be fine. Like everything was going to become calm and die down and lay still, but then Naruto did something strange. He stopped needing chakra and reached over, raising his right palm and coming into contact with the mark on Sasuke's right shoulder. Naruto, don't! Karen shouted. The moment flesh touched flesh, the second of calm erupted and everything burst outwards. Including myself. I was airborne, along with everything else around me, and as the ground began to rumble, it caused a crack almost a good 3 feet deep and every single lamp light in the room exploded, glass shattering. The ceiling literally blew apart and the water around their feet shot into the air, going so far up out of the place that when they stopped needing chakra, falling to their knees out of exhaustion, it was as if it were raining. I told you to stop them. Karen moaned from wherever she had flown to. I told you. By the time I gathered my bearings and became conscious of myself again, I discovered I was thrown so far backwards that I rammed back through 6 or 7 solid brick walls and found myself lodged all the way back into the walkway where the hallway used to be. I groaned, not even needing to check to know that I had most likely broken multiple bones and collapsed many organs inside my body. Well, this was one heck of a ride. Ero Sennin, Naruto called out tentatively. I could hear 2 pairs of feet climbing out of the gaping hole that used to be the bath and sloshing through the pouring water from the sky. Part of the ceiling had caved over me and the light above my head was flickering with oil spilling and threatening to start a fire, but I was alive. I moved part of the wall, alerting them to my position, and they ran over quickly. Are you all right? Naruto asked. They both grabbed the wall and lifted it, allowing me to pull myself out from underneath. Yeah, I laughed. Did I ever tell you about the time I caught Tsunade in the bath? This is nothing like that. This is actually worse than that. There are only 2 times I almost died in my life. That was one and this is the other. Your chest. Naruto pointed out. You have a huge gash on it. But I wasn't preoccupied in thinking about my wounds, however fatal they may have been. I was too busy looking up at the 13-year-old boys standing before me in awe. Not only was this the chakra I was drawn to, but this is quite honestly even stronger than the combination of the legendary ones at the final valley. This is remarkable. Is everyone alright in here? A voice yelled, coming from the wall behind me. It seems as if we've had a lightning storm. A woman's voice declared. Or maybe an earthquake. Another voice asked. It felt like an earthquake to me. Numerous concerned and frightened voices came to my ears then, but with the way Naruto and Sasuke barely responded to them, it was as if those people had always been around, but I was just too into my own thoughts to hear. And that seal. Naruto's hand loomed over my face, dripping with the blood coming from my chest. Even though I've never seen it before, it fits the legends. Hurry. Evacuate the whole building. What if it was a gas leak? Someone asked. A black ring with a black circle in the center. Is there anyone injured? Help us move this wall. It's not necessary. Sasuke's voice rang out. We're all fine in here. He and Naruto exchanged glances, to which they each grabbed one of my arms and began to pull me. Naruto, you've really opened a can of worms this time. Naruto, I was so exhausted by the time we were able to sit down and get some rest. We had to hightail it out of that inn and anywhere around there as fast as possible. That chakra you unleashed, it'll be like a beacon. Ero Sennin told us. Every sensor surrounding Anbu and any kind of high-level ninja will be running as fast as they can to get here. I don't get it. Why would they want get near a weird chakra? I had asked. It doesn't matter if it's unfamiliar or not. He said as we ran. It's strong. Higher level ninja like the Akatsuki will most likely assume it's a Jinchuriki and others will just be curious to find out who it is. In any case, it's not wise for them to discover the source. I wanted to ask why not, but we were running and I was getting out of breath already. Needing all that chakra wasn't easy. After we dug Karen out of this crack in the wall she got smashed into, we were able to persuade her to heal Ero Sennin. Or actually, she ignored me when I said it, but then when Sasuke insisted she agreed. Since then, we headed as fast as we could north, further away from Konoha than we were at Orochimaru's hideout. Being near Konoha or anywhere near the Land of Fire is actually a bad idea at this point. Ero Sennin had said. So by the time we finally stopped, we were basically on the border of our land and the next one. As proof, the valley we were in topped off with a cliff-side view of a beach. Sasuke sat on the cliff edge, one leg dangling off the side, looking out into the water. I lay on my back gazing up into the dark sky and the stars overhead. Sasuke. What's happening to us? I asked, finally deciding to be the one to say it. I actually hadn't even really let it register. Let it sink in. That somehow, someway, our needing chakra practically destroyed a bathing house, half of an entire inn, and left a 20 feet deep, 10-foot wide crater where we were standing. I was so busy trying to make sure Ero Sennin was okay and that all of the other people staying at the inn didn't get too badly injured that I just blocked it out. I was sure Sasuke had done his best not to think about it, too, since I would have heard him if he did. But there was no hiding from it at that point. Sasuke, I said again, tugging on his arm. But he was silent. I picked at my shorts. We could have really hurt Ero Sennin and a lot of other people. And it was all just by needing chakra. I sat up, allowing my eyes to trail along the beach below us and find Ero Sennin sitting by himself on a rock talking to a couple frogs. He said he had a message to send someone. Ero Sennin looked really weird this whole time, too. I said, like there's something he's not telling us. I frowned at the thought that Ero Sennin could be hiding something from me. What if this thing we're doing? What if it's bad? I asked him. What if it's like a forbidden jutsu? But it didn't feel bad. The reason why I didn't stop was because it felt peaceful somehow. Like my chakra wanted to mix with Sasuke's. And then all my muscles started relaxing and I closed my eyes and it was like I was sleeping again. I didn't even realize what was happening until Sasuke thought something mean and I instinctively reached out and shoved him, and when my hand touched him, everything just exploded. I played with my fingers, straining hard to hear any of Sasuke's thoughts, but his head was completely silent. It was like he wasn't thinking anything at all. I was about to make a joke about him being more empty-headed than I was when he abruptly turned his head right. I followed his gaze, looking down at Karen who was soaking in the water, finally deciding to take a bath now that it was too dark for anyone to see her. Naruto, Sasuke suddenly said. I looked up at him, eyes widening in surprise. I had been pretty sure he was in one of those moods where I could talk for hours and he wouldn't say a word. What? If your clan wasn't almost extinct, and you had the choice to go live with them instead of going back to Konoha, would you do it? Unlike normally, as he asked me this, he looked me directly in the eyes. And it was weird, it almost scared me. Why is his Sharingan activated right now? But more than the fact that he was looking at me like he was ready for battle, the look in his eyes there. I was getting so good at feeling his emotions I almost immediately categorized it as something negative, like he was torn up about something. Why do you want to know that? I asked tentatively. Just answer me. I tucked my knees into my chest and wrapped my arms around them. Well, I'd be interested in seeing them. I said, so I could figure out who my parents were and what I meant to them. I turned my palm over, looking at the mark on it. It would also help me understand a lot of stuff about myself, too. I said, but, that decision, it's almost impossible to make. I shook my head then turned back to look at him. No, it would have to be both. I finally decided. I could easily care about my real family the same way I care about my family in Konoha. I wouldn't have to choose one over the other. I could spend time with both. I glanced back down at my palm again and brought it closer to my face. Did this symbol change? I glanced up at Sasuke, looking around to see his neck. Weird. His symbol is the same now, too. I reached for it, wanting to turn his head to be sure, but he jerked away from me. Don't touch me, he ordered. Did you already forget what happened last time? And as I approached him, like a reminder, my right hand pulsated with white sparks of lightning, rotating around my forearm, and Sasuke's left arm momentarily did the same thing before both sparks died out. You never answered me from before. I said to him. Do you think we should try to stop this? Yes, he said. I squinted, listening for his underlying voice. Those thoughts that would give away his lie, but they never came. He got to his feet, brushing the dirt off his shorts, but I grabbed his pocket, stopping him from walking away. But didn't something feel right about it to you, too? I asked him. He pulled his leg forward, trying to force my hand off of him. And besides, I went on. Back then, when we were gathering chakra, I remembered something about Itachi that I think you should. He suddenly whipped his leg forward so hard, he could have pulled my arm out of its socket. His shorts slipped from my fingers and I almost rolled face first onto the ground. I raised my head looking up as he glared down at me, blood-red eyes piercing into mine. Then, without saying anything, he turned, sliding his hands into his pockets and walking off, and as my eyes set on him, I couldn't help but feel like I was losing him again. Sasuke. I was literally mentally exhausted by the time I got away from Naruto. It was taking almost every brain cell I had to bar my thoughts from his. That was just an experiment to see if I could successfully stop our connections. It wasn't that I wasn't thinking. It was just that I was folding my chakra in on itself to keep it from expanding out and reaching him. With my Sharingan on, I could clearly see what was happening between us. Our chakra was meshing in a way. While we were running, Karen frantically told me, "Your chakra almost completely became one." "What do you mean?" "I mean, okay, your chakra, right? It normally has a kind of feel to it, like a kind of color. Yours is normally dark blue," she said, "characteristic of really strong chakra. And usually Naruto's is a light blue, but back then, it completely changed." She shivered. This weird red chakra filled him. And it was like rage. Pure hatred or something, she said. It was really, really scary. And then, it mixed with yours and together. All your chakra was turning this vibrant purple color. I'd seen the tints of purple before. My Chidori carrying purple highlights or purple tinges in my vision while I used my Sharingan, but I never imagined it was because my chakra was constantly trying to mold into Naruto's chakra, from whatever demon was nesting inside him. "So, what happened?" I began. "It was because of that red chakra." She was quiet for a moment, seeming to ponder it, and then she slowly shook her head. "Even though that chakra felt really evil, it was like, pacified somehow," she explained. "Like a calm rage. It wasn't his chakra alone that did it, it was the result of connecting to yours. And that was all I needed to know completely. If it can mold, it can unmold." Barricading my chakra from Naruto's, protecting my thoughts, and simultaneously protected his from me. I could force us to go back to normal, whether he had the mark or not. But it would take a lot of time and patience. The only issue is, every second I spend trying to remove myself from him felt wrong. I sat against a tree near the top of the cliff in front of a small pond. In the reflection of the water, I could clearly see my eyes, Sharingan deactivating, and the mark on my shoulder. The three tomo that had been there had changed, blending together in a single dot circled by a ring. The same as the mark Naruto's had turned into. It was even more difficult than the decision to leave the village in the first place. I balled one of my hands into a fist, crushing a berry I'd picked up. I let the red juice run between my fingers. The only thing I was truly thinking about when we were needing chakra was peace and happiness. Staying stationary in those happy dreams of Naruto's are my own. But once he touched me, and everything exploded outwards and I realized what was happening, all those thoughts changed. In that instance, it was like I could feel every single life energy on the face of the planet breathing and moving and living. There was so much power. So much of it. And not one limitation. Anything was literally possible. But at the same time, there was that crater in the ground and the old man bleeding and crushed by all that rubble, and half of the entire inn craved in. This is too much. I had no doubt in my mind that, with Naruto and that crazy power we had, if we could harness it, his offer to help me take down Itachi wasn't just a whimsical expression of kindness or a what-if scenario, or even a bad idea. It isn't just that we could stop Itachi. We would pulverize him. Any attack that we could do together, as long as we were smart about it, it would kill him. Kill anyone. And that in itself was unnerving. That we could potentially kill anyone. I was someone who was all about challenge. All about having a rival. All about having something that I needed to fight for, get up for, live life for. But in a world where simply needing chakra could bring any enemy to near death. What's the point of that kind of life anyway? I asked. Yes, Sasuke. My eyes flicked to the right, Sharingan turning on, and I realized, far too late, the rock I'd assumed was just a rock was morphing into something else. Yes. What is the point? His long black hair stuck up out of it and he slithered out, growing like a disease, and he slithered out of the rock next to me. Sasuke-kun, it's such a pity it's come to this. How did you find us? He chucked, slithering in a snake-like form over to me. All of my minions are like signal flares. He sneered. Therefore, it was incorrect to believe that taking Karen with you was to your benefit. She's still to my benefit. In this situation, and more importantly than that, you and Naruto did something earlier. He went on. That, too, was like a signal flare. His body moved past me and into pond. Once touching it, his form solidified and he was able to stand atop the water. I know Jiraiya and what decision he would make once something like that happened. He said, still smirking. Which is remove you both as far away from the village and that site as possible. All I had to do was move accordingly. I leaned backwards as he bent over, pushing his face right into my line of sight. It's like it makes him happy when he knows people are disgusted by him. Don't tell me you're thinking what I think you are. I remained silent, but I didn't panic. It had been a long time since I was afraid of him. Especially since I knew that he needed me but I in no way needed him. You're thinking that, perhaps, you'll just stay with Naruto, aren't you? He seethed. And you'll use this strength that he grants you to complete your goal. He narrowed his eyes at me. You're considering taking the easy way out. Finding a less dangerous path. Are you that frightened of Itachi? I'm not afraid of anything. Then are you going back on your prior decision? He asked. Are you that weak? No. Are you lacking your hatred for Itachi? I gritted my teeth. Never that. I'll loathe that man even after I die. It's obvious, isn't it, Sasuke? You're considering defeating Itachi with the help of another. He snickered. How pitiful. That the last living heir of the clan cannot redeem it alone. My fingers sunk into the dirt, gripping it. You're failing, Sasuke. He whispered, sinking down into the pond. At this rate, you won't defeat Itachi, or restore your clan, or even be an appropriate protege for me. His dark greenish-yellow eyes shined out at me before he disappeared. You'll be nothing but Naruto's pet for as long as you live. The moon shimmered against the pond as the ripples from his sinking head reached out and went still. Then suddenly, there were loud footsteps crunching hurriedly against leaves and kicking rocks and dirt. Ungracefully. Without even thinking, I knew who it was. As if I could feel his particular life force. How did you find me? His feet stopped next to me and he looked around frantically. I don't know. I was falling asleep and then I just felt you. He answered, walking around. What I felt was like an alarm. Like you were in danger. It must have been then, when Orochimaru first appeared and startled me. Somehow, that shock, and perhaps the underlying desire I had to escape from him alerted Naruto. Orochimaru. Naruto exclaimed. He was here. I could feel the beads of sweat collecting at my neck and making their way down my back as I rose to my feet. I started walking, back through the trees and up the hill, and he followed, watching me curiously with his hands behind his head. Sasuke, why don't you want to talk to me? He wasn't looking at me and his lips didn't move, so it was obvious it was a thought I'd heard that somehow got through even though I had my Sharingan on and was trying again to disconnect us. At that point, I turned it off. And as we got to the edge of the cliff overlooking the beach where Karen slept in the sand all the way to the left of one side, I allowed myself to think. Naruto, I thought we were rivals. His eyebrows furrowed. We are. Then answer me this. What's the point of being a rival with someone who you need to borrow your strength from? You don't borrow your strength from me. What happened? That was because we put our chakras together. Right. Then he reached out and grabbed my arm. Actually, there's something I've been dreaming about. Something I want you to see, too. I think if we get closer, I can show it. Do you think I really want to get any closer to you? But I'm thinking Itachi might be. Don't talk to me about him. He froze, fingers slipping from my arm momentarily. Maybe it was something he was seeing. Something in my eyes, but he frowned, gritting his teeth and jumping into me. My back slammed against the ground and he raised his fist above my face, already raging. What the hell is wrong with you suddenly? I don't need your help. I don't need anyone to do anything for me. I'm not weak. I never said you were. Then let go of me. I grabbed his fist, Chidori sparking in my other hand as I did. You're pissing me off, Sasuke. I don't need anyone to tell me what to do. I don't need anyone to control me. I'm not trying to control you, Bakasuke. He caught my arm just as I was about to thrust my Chidori hand up and through him. I never said I wanted to control you. All I want is to be with you while you decide what you want to do. He shoved me further down into the grass. But you're such a paranoid idiot, you don't even understand what it means to have a friend. A friend? I shoved his hands off me and averted my eyes from him while letting my head fall back into the grass, gazing up at the leaves above our heads. Naruto, if you're sick of me, then. I never said I was sick of you. I'm not giving up. No matter how hard you try to push me back or how long you fight to pull away from me, I'm not going anywhere, you bastard. And then oddly, after a couple silent moments, he smiled. Because I'm a clingy, emotional wreck. Right. I stared at him for a moment and then let go of him, spreading my arms out. That's right. You said before that there's nothing good about being someone who loses everything. He whispered. But you're wrong, Sasuke. He stood up and ran his hand through his blonde hair. Because being alone doesn't make you weak at all, it makes you strong. He told me. Really strong. Strong enough to fall 100 times, even 1,000,000 and still be able to find your own way and get back up. He held his hand out to me. And no matter how long it takes for you to stop being an idiot, I'm still going to be there. I'll always be waiting for you to get back up. Forever. You're such an idiot. Not more than you are. I raised my hand, extending it toward him slowly, and he grabbed it, helping me up to my feet. What are you guys doing up so late? A voice asked. Almost in a simultaneous thought process, we both recognized the owner of the voice and reacted in our own ways. I lowered my eyes to the ground, walking off in silence, and Naruto whipped around, surprise crossing his face. Ero Sennin, stop sneaking up on people. He exclaimed. Was he here all along? No. If he was, he'd have stopped my meeting with Orochimaru. But then I reconsidered that, almost smiling at my foolishness. Interestingly enough, though, Naruto beat me to the realization. Ero Sennin likes it when people make their own decisions. He wouldn't have stopped that. Or more so, he dislikes me. Naruto frowned and turned to me. That's not true. Can you guys stop, mind chatting, and answer my question? Jiraiya spoke up. Naruto's eyes widened. He knows. It's not like it's that hard to figure out. I was just. Naruto paused. I can't tell him about Orochimaru, just in case. We were just practicing. He decided on. You're awful at lying. It's not like you're doing any talking, Mr. Silent Treatment. Jiraiya's eyes turned to me. Practicing. Orochimaru is aware of our position. I responded. If you're worried about his influence over Naruto, I'd advise you to leave. Oh great. Now you decide to speak and it's the truth. Jiraiya stared at me for a long time and then he turned to Naruto. Go get some wood so we can make a fire near the water. He said. Naruto groaned. How come I? Jiraiya shoved him. Hey, do what I say or else I won't give you a copy of my new book. No one wants your weird sexy books, Ero Sennin. Naruto yelled before running off. I turned, walking toward the cliff where I jumped off, skidding down the side until both feet landed firmly in the sand. Jiraiya followed close behind me effortlessly until, near the bank, I finally turned around and addressed him. What do you want? To know the decision you're making. Isn't that obvious? I asked, sitting down in the dirt. The calm whoosh of the waves calmed my inner soul. Somewhere inside me, like some kind of strange umbilical cord, I could feel a slightly tugging, alerting me whenever Naruto got too far away. I wonder how big this firewood needs to be. And not only was our connection getting stronger in that soon, I was sure we'd be able to pinpoint each other's exact locations, but I could hear his thoughts over larger distances, and when he was near me, our thought communication was almost flawless. I bet Aro Sennin's giving you the third degree, huh, Sasuke? Told you should have lied. Shut up. Even with my Sharingan being able to stop our mental communication, Naruto could still sense my emotions and pinpoint my location. Despite everything Orochimaru had said, with that still being a possibility. I can't leave Naruto even if I want to. I told him. And do you want to? Of course, I do. He said, squatting in the sand next to me. Somehow, I didn't think Kakashi's pupil would grow to be so difficult with friends. Spare me the pity, I muttered. I'm in no mood. I'm not concerned about what mood you're in. He said, but you need to make a decision now. Are you a threat to Naruto or not? Killing him would most likely kill me, too, at this rate. That didn't answer my question. He said, are you a threat? I smirked. That's smart of him. He realizes that there's a difference between being a threat to someone and planning to kill them. Well, duh, Sasuke. Can you just shut up? Wouldn't it be best for both of us to die anyway? I asked him. You witnessed it yourself. Two 13-year-olds with the power to destroy the entire world. That in itself is a threat. He smiled at me. You're almost better at slinking around someone's question than Orochimaru. He appraised me. But I'm not worried about the world. I'm worried about my pupil. Because you feel obligated to. Since he sees you as something like a father. No. Because I actually care about him. I pushed my toes further into the sand, feeling the ocean spray up in my face. Why did you ask us to need chakra? I wanted to know. You were trying to do an experiment. What did you discover? He chuckled. So, you won't answer my question, but you expect me to answer yours? He asked. You need me, Jiraiya. I don't need you. Someone who had an actual fan base, as a kid always acts like a self-righteous bastard. Keep talking, and I'll block you out with my Sharingan again. Ha 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 ha. I'm not a threat to Naruto. I muttered. If anything, he's a threat to me. To my goal. To my life. To my entire drive as a human being. What? Your whole Avenger thing? He asked humorously. Only children can model their entire lives after an emotion. It's not an emotion. It's a way of life. Exactly. That's something a child would say. He explained. It's as if you can't see any situation that being an Avenger won't save you from. It's like it doesn't exist. It doesn't. So how does being an Avenger save you from this chakra connection seal? He asked. I was silent. The waves continued to whoosh. You need to be more flexible with your way of life, if that's what it is. He said. Sometimes that works, but other times other things work. You can't be all Avenger and never listen. Just like you can't be only a listener and never an Avenger. I rolled my eyes. You sound like Kakashi. I grumbled. He laughed. Who do you think taught him? Just my luck. I'm listening to a super Kakashi. Hehehehe. Yup. That's basically Aro Sennin for you. He has the super pervert part down, too. But what he was saying made at least some sense to me. It was true, as far as I could see, that rigid thinking was only a fast way to death. If I was going to defeat Itachi, I was at least going to need to master that. But thinking of flexibility reminded me of something else. You said, chakra connection seal. I remembered. Is that what this is? Is that what you discovered? He looked out onto the waves. I'm not sure. I've only heard of it legends. Those kinds of legends you think is just a bedtime story. Explain. Well, you've heard of the Sage of the Six Paths, right? Of course. He's the grandfather of old wives' tales. The thing is, there's big reason to believe he actually wasn't a wives' tale. I smirked. Yeah, right. A god-like being, who created everything. I said, we're going for flexibility, remember? I sighed, opting to say nothing. In any case, the classic legend is that the sage created ninjutsu and spread the teachings of strength and individuality. What do you mean by that? That the strong persist, he explained, and in turn are crushed by the weak and helpless. Of course, that's what this whole system was built upon. That's why we're ninja. To use our power to rule and dictate to the weak how to live or watch them all burn. Quote. There needs to be a world where people truly understand each other. You're just spouting whatever this old man tells you without thinking. He believed in me. So, I believe in him, too. But there's another tale. That what the sage truly created was ninshu. He explained. And he went around spreading the teachings of fellowship between man and cooperation. Which is basically the opposite, right? Instead of individuals making it to the top, everyone does. Exactly. Ninshu. This is a true way of life. I frowned at his blatant mocking of my previous statements but couldn't find anything to say against it. In all of the old scrolls that talked about it, scrolls that Hashirama Senju possessed in the Hokage manner, the symbol that you both have printed on you was present in one shape or form. He smiled. Actually, that was the only thing in those scrolls that really stuck out to me. For some reason, I just really liked the style. Unlike me, however, Orochimaru was really interested in the words. So, I'm sure, he even knows more about it than I do. Orochimaru, I repeated. He chuckled. The one who told me about that tale was him, actually. Then we read the legends together. Even though it doesn't seem possible, there was a time when even Orochimaru believed in people. He told me, before his parents died, and he chose the solitary, ambitious path he did. He sighed. At this point, he probably doesn't even remember the person he was when he made that choice. All that matters to him is being the best, and now he's spending the rest of eternity fighting a battle that's all in his head. Being the best. Solitary. Ambitious path. Hey, that sounds just like you, Sasuke. I frowned. Is that why you're talking to me? I asked him. Because I reminded you of your twisted childhood friend. He laughed. Well, you do remind me of him. The place you are is the exact same place he was before I lost him forever. He said quietly. Then he smiled. But that's not why I decided to speak to you. Then, I'm taking the time to speak to you, and also to Naruto, because I still believe. He looked up at the stars. I believe in the people. I followed his eyes, gazing up at the stars too. The people. Told ya, I'm going to block you. I threatened under my breath. I guess the signal from Naruto's thoughts is pretty strong. I stared at him questioningly and then sighed. Of course. That's the reason you told him to go. I realized. You weren't trying to separate us, you were trying to see how far our range was. It seems to be pretty far, too. He commented. I purposely hid all the firewood about 2.5 miles from here. He turned to me. Can you keep a marker on where he is? I rose to my feet. It grows stronger when I can hear him thinking. But right now, I can feel a constant pull alerting me every time he wanders more than 1/4 mile. I let my eyes move over the trees. He's that direction, I said, pointing south. Only about 20 meters away. Can you actually see him? No, I replied. But sometimes, I can see through his eyes. I closed my eyes, not really sure how to start it, but the longer I kept my eyes closed, the more something came into view. What are you doing? Switch places with me. Wait. Just do it. I'm trying to see the extent of our powers. And then, I opened my eyes and looked around at the dark forest surrounding me. Well, This actually isn't that hard. It was in a lot clearer focus than the times we'd done it by accident, and I could actually move in his body. I lifted a hand, flexing the fingers in front of my face. These powers are strange. They're incredibly strong but not at all difficult to wield. If all of those old tales Jiraiya was talking about are actually fact, the only reason an ancient user of this way of life would discard it is if power and pride were truly the only important things to them. I frowned as that thought came to mind. Similar to my own thoughts. What's the purpose of life without winners or losers? Things that you can never have and people that you can never catch up to. A life that boring. Is that even life? I still wasn't sure, but I did certainly know one thing. I did it simply to test my vessel. Pride was what destroyed me and killed my people. So even if I was willing to become the monster I so despised to destroy the previous monster, now that I had a secondary option, I vowed to oppose any being who was completely self-interested. Suddenly, as I pulled myself out of my deep thoughts, I became aware of the steady sound of a something liquid hitting the base of a tree right in front of me. My eyes jerked down, realizing that Naruto's pants were lowered and he had been in the process of. What the hell, Naruto? I really had to go. I immediately lost control of his body, not that I wanted to keep it, and swapped out with him, settling back into my own body. As I became aware of the senses around me, Jiraiya was rolling around in the sand laughing his head off, cracking jokes about peeing vicariously, and forget blood brothers, you've invented piss brothers. I sighed, watching as Naruto finally made his way down the bank, with his zipper still undone, and a gigantic grin on his face. As I stood there, scowling at everyone around me, I couldn't help but wonder if it was too late to catch up with Orochimaru. It was really easy to fall asleep on the beach. Without wearing a shirt or shoes and feeling the nice cool breeze with the stars above and the blazing fire warming me up as soon as it got too cold. I was dreaming as soon as I closed my eyes. But I woke up pretty quickly. To a hand on my face. Naruto. I blinked, moving my head. I looked right, seeing Karen lying with her back facing me, silhouetted by the dying embers of the fire, and then looked up into the face of my intruder. What? You said you wanted to show me something. I rolled over, getting into a sitting position and nodded. Show me. Now. Why so late? Because I said so. You're always so damn pushy. But I stretched and yawned and opened my eyes fully. It was almost completely pitch black since the fire had died. I could hear the waves, feel some of it if I reached far out to the right, but I couldn't see them. I couldn't even see Sasuke right in front of me. So, how are you going to do it? Sit in front of me. I could hear him positioning himself to sit cross-leggedly just like I was, and I pushed myself as close as I possibly could be to him, close enough so that our knees touched. And now what? I reached out for him, running my hand up his shoulder. Because I could feel his emotion, I suddenly got a strong sense that he was flustered or something. What are you doing? He demanded to know. Think. Don't speak. Everyone's sleeping. Stop giving me orders. I need to find your mark, so hold still. You don't have to touch all over me for that. I ignored him, moving his hair to the side so I could place the curse mark on my palm over the one on his shoulder. Okay. Now, come closer. This is getting weird. Hey, you woke me up. But he listened to me, moving his head closer, and I moved mine closer to his until our foreheads pressed together. How do you know this is what we're supposed to do anyway? I don't know. I guess it just feels right. Of course. You're the one that asked for this, Sasuke. Speaking of which, why now? Because certain things don't work all the time. Some things work sometimes and other times. You have to be a flexible person so you can catch all of the possible opportunities. Inflexible people are the ones who are self-centered and prideful. I can't allow myself to act like the same kind of person who destroyed my life. But at the same time, I can't see any punishment more fitting. So, I have to go back to the drawing board to gather information. I have to make sure the way of life I chose to solve this problem is the correct one. Because of that, I need to go back to my past to see the information you're withholding. I stared at him. He stared back at me. It wasn't a question of hearing him. Our powers were so strong by that point that his thought probably could have continued for another 5 hours and I still would have been able to catch all of it. It was just that, I was pretty sure that somewhere, in some universe, gods were going into cardiac arrest from having to listen to and process all of the information in that one strain of thought. ... What the hell are you talking about? TCH. Just forget it. What do we do next? Close our eyes. And just wait, I guess. Maybe we're supposed to fall asleep at the same time. How is anyone supposed to sleep in this position? I don't know about you, but I'm falling asleep already. For some reason, as warmth began to surge between my palm and his neck, I got the feeling that we wouldn't have to sleep at all. I blinked, opening my eyes as brightness filled my field of vision, cast it off from the sunny pale yellow painted walls surrounding us, and the smell of roasted tomatoes and curry filled my nose. Sitting up quickly, Sasuke came into my view. I stared at him, following his line of sight until my eyes locked on a 6 or 7-year-old Sasuke stacking blocks in the corner of his bedroom. Sasuke. A voice called, but the kid was so into his stacking, he barely looked up. I need to find a circular one. He whispered to himself. Circular makes a castle. You were one of those airhead kind of kids, weren't you? I asked, getting to my feet. I turned to him, watching his expression fade to one of the darkest ones I'd ever seen him make as he asked me, without even a slither of expression in his tone. Of all the memories you could have picked, why this one? Just wait for it, I replied. I was actually pretty lucky I could get to the exact part of his memory I was searching for. It could have been our seals touching, or maybe because we'd gotten a lot closer with the whole chakra needing incident, but I expected us to have to make at least 5 tries, and instead, we ended up about a good 10 minutes before what I was wanted him to see. And with the weird dream world, early was always on time. Sasuke-kun, the voice yelled, pushing the door open. The young Sasuke got startled and jumped, causing his fingers to lose grip of the circular block he'd found to complete his castle, and he dropped it, collapsing the entire thing. Oh, I'm sorry, his mother said, leaning down to pat his head. I didn't mean to make you knock over your blocks. But Sasuke was already picking his blocks back up and positioning to restack them. It's okay. She watched him, smiling fondly. What happened to the black-haired little boy I know that used to throw a tantrum anytime someone knocked over his blocks? Younger Sasuke smiled up at her widely. I'm not a baby anymore, Oka-san. I'm a big boy. She laughed, running her hands through his hair. Well, then what is my big tough boy doing in his room all alone? She wanted to know. I thought you said you were going to go training with Itachi. Sasuke frowned. He told me he was busy. He mumbled, finding his circular block again. I'm sure he was just playing with you. She said, winking. Itachi's a bit like your daddy. You know, it's a bit hard for him to express his feelings. Sasuke's face lit up. You really think so? He asked. Of course. So why don't you put on something presentable and go look for him? Sasuke stood up, wearing nothing with a pair of gray shorts with a stain on it, and said, This is presentable. His mother laughed. Sasuke-kun, she said, wagging her finger at him playfully. I thought you said you were a big boy. Want me to have to start dressing you again? No, he exclaimed gleefully. She grabbed him around the waist, lifting him up and tickling him. You're going to have to go all the way back to being a baby again. She threatened. No, no, no. He laughed. And I'll have to dress you and feed you and change your diapers. She plopped him down on the bed where he fell to his knees and extended his arms like he was crying out to the heavens. No, he shouted, grabbing his neck. I'm melting back into a baby. He collapsed back into his light blue and white bed sheets, legs kicking up and arms sprawling out like he choked and died of mom germs. His mother laughed, poking his lifeless form. Forget being a ninja, she joked, walking out. Why don't you just go and sign up to be the village fool already? He grinned, popping back up and immediately going to find a clean pair of clothes. And I thought I was the village fool, I said, giggling. I glanced at Sasuke, who had watched the entire scene stoically, but I could feel his inner emotion incredibly strongly. Watching that entire scene, it was just. Sorry, I muttered, looking away. He turned, walking away and following his mother's path out of the room. I knew by experience that the farther we got away from the center, or young Sasuke, the more the memory sped up, so walking just a few meters through his house and toward the front door, had young Sasuke already finished changing, grabbing his satchel full of ninja tools and running through us and out of the front door. Wait, let me look at you. Sasuke sighed exaggeratedly as his mother paused in the front house entrance, giving him a once-over. He'd changed his outfit to simple white-colored long-sleeved shirt with the Uchiha crest large on his back and gray shorts. She ruffled his hair. I knew you could do it. She approved lovingly. Only an hour, okay. Then you and Itachi need to come home for dinner. He nodded and turned, taking a sharp turn toward the right. Something's wrong. I turned to Sasuke, who watched his younger self running away in confusion. What? He shook his head. This isn't how this happens. He explained. I left but Itachi was already. He shook his head, looking down at the ground, and I could hear his thoughts loud and clear. Wasn't he already home? But, wait, how could he already have been home when? Something's not adding up. Hurry up, I said, nudging him. Your younger self is going to get to the important part now. We broke into a run, hurrying down his district, where Sasuke stopped momentarily to crack jokes with his cousins or wave to his aunts and uncles before he left the district and came to the woods just outside of the village. He took his time looking for him, even stopping a couple times to pet squirrels and playfully scare the living hell out of grazing deer. Who would have known the big bad Sasuke would be friendly to forest animals? I knew he heard my thought, but he acted as if he didn't. He was still so wrapped up in his own thoughts. To me, it was like he hadn't stopped talking since we left his house. But then, wasn't it dark when I got back home? So, how could so much time have lapsed without me realizing it? He was really going through a mental block. Somehow, he'd completely forgotten doing anything we were watching him do. There's no other way around it, Itachi. A voice rang out. This is what we decided on. 4 grown men and women get together to decide the fate of more than 400 people, and this is the best they can come up with. Another voice asked. With the way Sasuke's head snapped up and his eyes narrowed, I could tell it was Itachi. Younger Sasuke reacted too, by standing up straight from where he'd bent to retie his sandals, and grinning impishly. He tiptoed over, probably planning to try to scare them based on that kitty addiction he seemed to have to sneaking up on people. I came up with it. The other voice said. Well, now it all makes sense. Itachi replied. The two voices rang out in light laughter momentarily before turning serious again. I'm not sure about this, Shisui. I don't think we need to resort to that kind of action yet. Force should only be applied if persuasion fails. You were supposed to be the one on the persuasion side, remember? Shisui pointed out. Itachi was silent. We edged around a tree, making our way into a small meadow where Shisui sat atop a tree, feet dangling, and Itachi leaned against the tree opposite him. You're so avoidant, Itachi. Shisui accused. That's a bad personality trait for a ninja. I have no reason to want to stop people in what they do. Whether it's spy on me, document my movements, listen to my conversations. I have nothing to hide. Everyone else in the clan should feel the same way. He replied. You only feel like that because you're avoidant. He said, beginning to laugh. Any normal person would be offended by such an intrusion of privacy and blatant distrust, and that's why we are where we are. Shisui sighed. Both sides are almost at the point of hatred for each other at this point. I know you. I know you'd rather everyone just drop the weapons and talk it out, but I think it's past the point of talking right now. You can't talk to someone who doesn't trust you. And you can't trust someone who won't talk to you. That's why I decided on the course of action I did. Itachi paused, fingering a kunai in his hand. No, I understand distrust, he said quietly. And if your method in controlling father fails in any way, we'll most likely have to react harshly, won't we? Shisui nodded slowly. Yeah, but perhaps not too harshly. Worse comes to worse, the head of the clan, at least, will have to die to destroy our unity. In that circumstance, we might be able to replace the clan head with someone who is partial to Konoha and wants to avoid a war. Shisui said, then he lowered his head. You know as well as I do that means killing your father and replacing him with you. Then noticing Itachi's facial expression, he offered him a smile. But I know how you are, so I won't involve you in that if it gets too far. Itachi shook his head. If you're talking about murdering my family, I'm the only one that has the right to do it. He flipped his kunai around in his hand. And at the end of the day, I am still a ninja no matter what my ideals are. If it comes to that, I can do it. I won't hesitate to do it. The only person I can't do any harm towards is, he cut himself off abruptly. And then, in a simultaneous moment, his Sharingan snapped on and his eyes locked on a solitary 6-year-old boy who, in his shock at what was being said, forgot to keep hiding behind the tree Shisui was sitting on. It was clear younger Sasuke had heard everything they had said, and with the way he was looking at his brother, like he didn't even know who he was anymore. It looked like the world was crashing down around his ears. He turned around, feet smacking against the dirt as he ran as fast as he could away from them, breathing heavily, pushing leaves and branches out of his face, tripping and falling and rolling in the dirt a couple times. Itachi and Shisui nodded at each other and with almost no effort involved, they appeared where younger Sasuke was struggling to get away. Shisui dropped behind him, grabbing his arms and stopping him from movement. Next to me, Sasuke's hands balled into fists as he watched his older brother approach the younger version of himself. Younger Sasuke writhed against the forest floor, eyes widening as he watched his dear older brother get closer to him, and that whole, big boy, thing flew straight out of the window in seconds as he curled up, tears forming in his eyes as he tried desperately to pull behind Shisui. Let me go. Younger Sasuke cried. I want Oka-san. Sasuke, Itachi said to him. No. Stay back. Sasuke whimpered, beginning to shake. You're scaring me. His lips began to tremble and then birds became airborne, diving out of the forest as quickly as their wings could carry them as the sound of a young boy's sobs filled the air. Itachi, seemingly startled by his crying, walked toward him quickly. Hey, don't cry. Stay away from me, Sasuke sobbed. Itachi held his hands up in surrender, still easing toward him at a snail's pace so that it wasn't as noticeable. It's just me, Sasuke. You know me. I'm your brother. Sasuke shook his head hard. You said you were gonna kill Otu-san. He shouted. Itachi faked an expression of complete confusion. No, I was speaking metaphorically, Sasuke. Like with shuriken practice, he said to him, widening his eyes in innocence. Remember when we used to play and we'd call our defeated enemies, kills? This guy lies so easily. That's what's really scary. Sasuke paused in struggling for a second and a bit of understanding spread over his face as he struggled to stop sobbing. L like a game? He asked tearfully. B but it didn't sound like a game. Sasuke, please. He reached his hand out to which Sasuke instinctively shied away from, still unsure. Don't jump to conclusions, Itachi said, then he faked a bashful look down at the grass. It really hurts me that you'd think I'm capable of something like this so easily. Younger Sasuke hiccuped, expression turning to slight embarrassment at his older brother's words. The thoughts in Sasuke's head were swirling around so quickly, most of them filled with rage and cursing, I couldn't catch even one of them. I could never do anything to hurt you, Sasuke. I'm your big brother, remember? Itachi continued reassuring him. So, come here. He reached his hand out for him, eyes shimmering in the few streams of dimming sunlight that could break through the canopy of leaves. Sasuke. Now, he ordered. Sasuke had been hanging off of every single word he said, so by that point, there was no hesitation left as he leaned forward out of Shisui's grip and into his older brother's arms. Itachi reached up, drying his tears with his sleeve and ruffling his hair. You feel better? He asked him tenderly. Sasuke nodded slowly, still sniffling slightly. I still don't really get it, he said, lowering his head. Don't think about it, Itachi said to him, pulling his chin up. Just look at me. As the younger Sasuke lifted his eyes to him, Itachi immediately activated his Sharingan. Sasuke's eyes glazed over momentarily as Itachi lifted his hand and very slowly, reached out and lightly flicked his forehead with the tips of his forefinger and middle finger. There was a split second of silence, where Sasuke stared at Itachi, head lolling to the side slightly like he was in a trance. But then, all of a sudden, he seemed to catch himself, shaking his head hard and blinking rapidly like there was something in his eyes. En-ni-san. Young Sasuke gasped, reaching up to grab his wrist. Just relax, Sasuke, he said quietly to him. It hurts. Stop, he exclaimed. The panic came back into his eyes as younger Sasuke tried to step back and avoid him, but Shisui, quick on the uptake, had him tripped and pinned on his back in less than a second. He opened his mouth to scream, but Shisui easily slid his hand there, covering Sasuke's mouth. Itachi continued to press his fingers to his forehead, ignoring the persistent tears again streaming down his younger brother's face. Shish. Just relax, Sasuke. It'll be over in just a second. Sasuke's thoughts rang out loud in my head as he watched, with one of the most horrified expressions any human being could ever have. What's happening? Why is he? What's he doing to me? Younger Sasuke's feet kicked up and he struggled, both hands on his brother's wrist, trying to pry him off, but he was just too weak. Shish. Itachi continued to whisper. Don't fight it. I'm trying not to hurt you. Please, Sasuke. MMMMFFFAHH. Sasuke continued to scream, completely ignoring him until he made the mistake of opening his eyes again. Itachi leaned over him, catching Sasuke's gaze and steadily eyeing him into submission. Slowly, Sasuke's feet stopped scrapping at the dirt. That's right. Just relax, he told him, ruffling his hair softly. You can trust me. His legs trembled momentarily before they finally became completely still, and then his arms went weak, slipping from Itachi's wrist where his fingernails had made vibrant red welts along his skin, and hit the grass. Everything's fine, Sasuke, Itachi said quietly as Sasuke's eyelids slowly closed and Shisui removed his hand. I'm here. He's beginning to get resistant to that genjutsu. Shisui pointed out as Itachi pulled Sasuke into his arms. It's because you're doing it too often. You can't mess up and have another close call with him like this. Next to me, Sasuke touched his forehead and I could hear his thoughts whirring. Him touching me here. And all those other times. That was always this. He's always been. But why? Why is he doing this? What's the purpose? What's going on? He turned around, shaking his head. I can't watch this anymore. I grabbed his shoulder. One last thing, Sasuke. Then I promise we can leave. Please, stay. I begged him. Itachi said nothing as he stood up straight, holding his younger brother in his arms. He lifted a hand, the same one he'd used to flick Sasuke's forehead, and brushed his hair back off his forehead. I didn't mean to keep having to do this to him, Itachi said quietly, wiping his memory like this. Shisui shook his head. You said yourself that it's necessary. You said that Sasuke can't know about what's happening. Because if he ever found out, he'd be in danger, right? Sasuke's eyebrows furrowed as he walked toward them, right up to their faces. In danger of what? He asked them, but of course they couldn't see him, either of us. You said you wanted to protect him. Shisui reminded him. Itachi looked down at the unconscious boy in his arms and proceeded to hug him closely. And as their cheeks brushed against each other and he cradled him, he whispered, Sasuke, please forgive me. It was that moment. That right there, that made me want to show it to Sasuke. I could barely understand anything they were saying about killing his father or their clan or the village or anything, but the moment he hugged his little brother like that, hugged him like there was nothing else in the world that mattered. Even if Itachi really was a serial killer bent on mass destruction that had killed every single person he'd ever known and loved, I couldn't help but feel like it was necessary to let that silent man that I'd seen at the inn hurt Sasuke like he did, speak for the times that he held Sasuke lovingly. Shisui put his hand on Itachi's shoulder, taking a moment to comfort him. I always joke with you saying that you're not fit to be a ninja. Because of how much empathy you have and how you hate fighting, but. He shrugged, smiling at the ground. Everyone's like that deep inside. Maybe if everyone were more like you, the world would be a better place. Itachi said nothing, but he began to walk and Shisui followed. Near the edge of the forest, Itachi set Sasuke down next to a tree right before he regained consciousness, and not even realizing anything was strange, younger Sasuke just got up and walked back home. When he got there, Itachi was waiting. Sitting right on the porch steps. Ni-san, he called, running up to him and grinning. Hey, Sasuke, he said, giving him an easy smile. Where were you? Then he waited, watching his younger brother closely as his brow furrowed and he looked around. Even though it took a minute for him to respond, he didn't seem to factor in the state of his white shirt, which was so stained with dirt by that point, it could have been naturally brown, or the red scratch marks all over Itachi's right arm as he answered. Oh yeah, I was looking for you. He said. Then he smiled. Mom said you wanted to practice with me, but you just didn't know how to say it. Oh, did she now? Well, let's go remind her that we're old enough to speak for ourselves, now. Sasuke grinned. She tried to dress me earlier, too. He told him. We're going to have to give her the big boy talk. Sasuke prepared to run past him and duck inside, but before he could, Itachi reached out and put his hand on his head, gazing into his eyes again. Sasuke stared at him, blinking and then smiling widely. What? He asked. Itachi stared at him for a moment longer, and then seemingly satisfied, smiled again and said, Nothing. I just want you know. I love you, Sasuke. Sasuke next to me turned around, shaking his head and stuffing his hands into his pockets. Love? What the hell do you know about love? You fucking piece of shit lying bastard. I hate you. But younger Sasuke reacted in a childish, disbelieving way. I mean, how could he have known that would be the only time he'd ever get to hear his brother say that again? Really, Ni-san, I'm going to have to give you the big boy talk, too, now. Seriously? He asked, getting to his feet and laughing. But before he followed Sasuke inside, he glanced behind him, looking across the path at Shisui, who winked at him and then used a teleportation jutsu, disappearing into dust in the blink of an eye. Itachi smiled softly again. Ni-san, coming, Sasuke. Then the dream shattered, raining down on us like thousands of little diamonds, and I walked toward Sasuke, where he was in the empty space, realizing I couldn't leave until I had him with me, and grasped his hand. He didn't protest. And then, as quickly as it left, the smell of salty sea water rushed my nose, and I felt the sand in my toes and calmness with which the waves flowed. But there was something else. The warmth in my hand. I didn't feel it anymore. I raised my hand from Sasuke's neck and looked at my palm. The seal is gone. My eyes flicked over to Sasuke's neck and rose with shock. Even yours is gone, too. Slowly, Sasuke raised his head. And with the impending sunrise as our only guide to light, I watched the bursts of bright dandelion yellow and dawn blue reflect out of his onyx eyes. My eyes immediately locked on him and his on mine as we both reached out and touched each other's foreheads. It moved to our foreheads. Looks like it. But what does that mean? Sasuke turned his head, gazing out at whooshing waves, and beckoned to me. Let's go. Need chakra. Far away from the bank so it doesn't hurt anyone. He got to his feet, immediately beginning to walk atop the shore, and I couldn't help but to follow. Why? So we can fully merge our chakra. Once we do, we should be able to unlock everything this union entitles. I smiled at him, interlocking my hands behind my head as our feet began to touch the top of the cool water, walking atop it with ease. Why the sudden change? Because I want the power to be able to completely and utterly destroy someone's life. The same way they did mine. Okay, now, you're just messing with me. His eyes stayed locked on the horizon in front of us. And because his thoughts weren't conscious, I found myself looking outwards too. To the horizon, where the sky meets the sea. Where the yellowish pink meets the waving blue. And then his thoughts started up again. It's obvious that something else was going on at the time Itachi did what he did. But I don't care about his reasoning. Or anything like that. I'm just done playing puppet to someone else's whims. He's going to tell me the truth. Even if I have to die in the process. And you want to bond with me now because. He sighed, opting to speak aloud. Isn't it obvious? He asked. I stared at him blankly. Quote. No, because with the alternative that Itachi might have been acting on some reason other than just his own prideful whims, then, I can't approach him as I would have done before. He sighed. I was planning to approach him as the monster he was. Don't get wrong. He's still a monster. He gritted his teeth. Perhaps even more so than before. But he's just not the same kind of monster I thought he was. So, the path of an Avenger is currently unnecessary. I stared at him for a long time. You saying that, it feels like the world just turned on its head. I said quietly. I mean, I'm glad you've found yourself, and all, but you still didn't really answer me. He turned and looked at me and we locked eyes. You could still go deal with Itachi without being an Avenger, Sasuke. And I could still help you without us being all mentally connected or whatever. So, why do this? He sighed. What kind of question is that? It's not like you have anything better to do. My mouth dropped open slightly. Are you asking me or forcing me? Look, he rolled his eyes. Weren't you the one that wanted to do this in the first place? I never said I wanted to become one with you. I exclaimed, pointing at him. Especially not since you're acting like a stupid asshole. He grabbed his hair. Alright, fine. If I want to go see him now, right now, I need you to be there with me because. He sighed, glaring at the water. I expected him to say something like, because with you, I can get stronger, or, because if I leave you here and you die, it could kill me, or even something trivial like, because we've already gone this far, so why not go the rest of the way? But what he ended up saying was, like you said, I'm someone who lost everything. So trusting people is against my nature, but at this point, you're like part of me. I can't even wake up in the morning anymore without making sure you're up, too. I can't even plan my day without including you in it. He shook his head. Of course I'd need you to be there with me, because. He turned, looking me fully in the eyes. Naruto, you're all I have. A cool breeze blew by, whisking around our bare chests and blowing our hair back, and the truthfulness in his voice hit me like a bag of bricks. But still, all I could really do was grin and say, you're just now realizing that? He remained silent, but inside, I could hear him thinking 100 words a second. No, what I'm just now realizing is that, maybe if everyone in the world weren't so different, and there weren't weaklings, and strong ones, maybe we'd have no choice but to tell each other the damn truth. And maybe if everyone helped each other instead of focusing on their own selfish ambitions. The issues we have, the situations we run into, the evil, the death, the pain. I could see the visions in his head as he saw them. I did it to test my vessel. You're weak because you're lacking in hatred. I pretended to be the elder brother you desperately desired. I nodded, understanding his strain of thought. But that kind of world. One where there isn't a prodigy and a failure. One where there aren't shadows and bright spots. I smirked. You'd really suck in that world, seeing as you're a strong one, right? He scoffed, walking a couple of steps ahead of me. I'd gladly suck in any world where people don't have to end up like. He lowered his eyes to the water, looking down at the reflective surface. Like me. It's okay if you hate me. For making you have to watch all of that. I found myself muttering. I just thought. Maybe Itachi could have actually. Naruto. Startled, I looked up at him. He had been looking at the sunrise, but then he turned, and the bright colors illuminated behind him like some kind of artistic painting as he told me something he'd never said before. Quote. Thank you. So, twice, in less than 5 seconds, he completely surprised me by his actions. Again, I was completely at odds on how to respond. Sure. I stammered. It's cool. He moved his hands, bringing them up into position for gathering chakra. Come on. Let's get started. Yeah, Karen. They've been out there all morning. Just give it time. The old pervert man said. It's like feeling out all the specs of a brand new toy. Literally, a toy, too. Since with the way they're bouncing around on that water, it's like they're playing. I groaned. I wish I just decided to stay with Orochimaru after all. Why didn't you? He asked me. No one was forcing you to come along. Sasuke said he needed me. I paused, realizing what I said and backtracked. I mean, he said. It's not like I'm just following him or. I would hope not. He interrupted me. Because that would be pretty boring. What? I exclaimed. He laughed. Well, yeah, females who just hang all over the guy they like are boring. He said. You wanna know a secret? Men like subtlety. Oh great. The damn lecher is preaching to me. You don't even know the first thing about a good woman. Past your communal shower prostitutes. Hey, he yelled, stomping his feet. Keep talking to me like that and I won't give you the advice I was just planning on giving. Who wants advice from someone like you? Sheesh. He grumbled, turning away from me. It's obvious you're an Uzumaki female. Hot-headed, stubborn, and so damn annoying. I was about to get up and cross over to the water to break up Sasuke and that idiot boy so I could figure out our next move, but that caught my attention. What do you know about Uzumakis? I retorted. What I just said. A whole clan of weak and spineless men and loud and stubborn women. No wonder the whole thing collapsed. He muttered. Every single one of them is just like that woman. Kushina Uzumaki. My ears perked. Kushina. I repeated. You know her. He glanced down at me. Of course. She was the wife of the 4th Hokage of Konoha. Then he gave me a strange look. How do you know her? She was once a part of our nomadic clan. Karen replied. Before we were attacked, of course. The elders of the clan always used to tell stories about her to scare us from wandering away from the clan. They said, one day, she wandered only about 6 miles away and no one ever saw her again. Jiraiya burst into laughter. What the hell kind of wives' tale is that? He bellowed. I bet if Kushina knew they were telling stories like that, she would have come right back. Fit with an entire ghost costume, too. But then, that woman was alive and in Konoha. What the hell is it with that village, anyway? Why is it that it seems like everyone has some kind of connection there? After he finished laughing, he addressed me seriously. Konoha struck a deal with your clan to buy her to be the body host for a demonic spirit, better known as the Nine-Tails Beast. That makes sense. We all have naturally strong chakra. And Jinchuriki hosts are best that way. People used to buy ninja. I wanted to know. Hell, people still buy ninja. It's actually a good market. He replied. But anyway, she ended up falling in love with my pupil, and the 4th Hokage, Minato Namikaze. Your pupil? Huh, yeah, right. And then in one fatal incident, the beast broke out of her and rampaged across the village. In that situation, she and the Hokage both gave their lives to protect the village and the great fox demon was passed down to their only heir. Their son. My eyes lifted to him. There's an Uzumaki boy walking around. I asked. Other than Sasuke, a boy like that might be my dream boy. He nodded. I wouldn't mind telling you as long as you swear not to tell anyone else. Who would I tell? I asked, rolling my eyes. He lifted his finger, pointing toward the ocean and across the waves at the boys. Just then, they punched at each other and a huge wave of chakra burst out, causing a water wave of almost 15 feet to lift up and crash toward the shore. But none of that caught my interest. My mouth was so far open salt water was flying into it. You're kidding me, I exclaimed, washing my previous thoughts so far out of my mind, it might have struck stars. Nope, he said, leaning back. The idiot boy, as you like it call him, actually just so happens to be royalty. I mean, I knew he was a half-breed Uzumaki and that he had some weird chakra thing going on inside of him, but to actually be that important. But he's an idiot, I protested. Jiraiya laughed. Yeah, well, that's what happens when you grow up like he had to. I turned, looking out onto the water and realizing what he was saying. He and Sasuke clashed again, and the chakra that boomed out caused a wave of almost 30 feet that time. Their fists weren't even touching. It was almost like they were air chakra natures and compressing air palms. I see. Growing up with no parents. I scoffed. Oh, boo-hoo. Everybody's an orphan. I replied. It's actually good not to have a family. You're free to do whatever you want that way. He's lucky. Is that how you feel? I leaned back in the sand. I tried to warn my family about the other clan coming to kill us all. I felt it coming days off. And they laughed at me. Said there was no way my sensing abilities could be that strong. And mocked me. Even my own damn mother and father. I mashed my lips together. So, when the attacking clan came, I watched them all burn. I said, that'll teach them to distrust me. Naruto and Sasuke ran at each other again, bouncing off of the surface of the water seemingly effortlessly and gliding into toward each other before pushing their palms out and blasting off of each other. In my eyes, it was like red and blue clashing with purple bursting between them, knocking them both in different directions. Clans, races, villages, all that stuff is just crap. I said, it's just false unity. A way for people to feel like the world isn't as big as it is. And it's stupid. Because the people in your clan can hate you while the people outside of your clan can love you. That's very perceptive for a 13-year-old girl. I shrugged. Life is stupid. I muttered. It's nothing but bad choices and regret. Being with Orochimaru. That just saves me from having to make a decision in the first place. But, I do have some regrets. Regrets like wishing every night of my life that I had tried harder. I had always secretly thought that I should have forced everyone to listen to me despite the fact that as a child I was incredibly soft-spoken and very ill at birth. But when I first arrived with Orochimaru, he discovered the truth that my illness was nothing more than hints to what was probably the strongest censor the clan had ever had. If they really loved me, he said, they never would have taken me for granted. I dug my toes into the sand. Glancing up at Jiraiya, whose eyes were locked on Naruto and Sasuke, very intently like he was watching some kind of game. I lowered my eyes to the sand, pressing my fingers against the softness, uncovering small seashell pieces here and there, and allowing myself to sink back into my thoughts. Still though, I can't help but feel like maybe, the issue really is me. Back then, I was a coward. I always walked with my head down and spoke like I didn't want anyone to hear me anyway. How the hell could I expect people to trust what I had to say if I didn't even look like I trusted myself? I pursed my lips again. But that's why I'm different now. Because from that point on, from the point I was reborn as one of Orochimaru's children, I never looked back, or down, or anywhere except right into someone else's eyes ever again. And I was never afraid to say anything, no matter how odd, or out of place, or even downright rude ever again. Slowly, I lifted my head, raising my eyes to the brightening sun before me. In a way, I'm still making up for the one fatal time that I was afraid. And it cost me the lives of everyone I'd ever known. So anyway, I said, sitting up. It's clear now why you have a thing for that kid like you do. I pointed at Naruto just as a staggering wave of chakra whipped past us, almost causing my blood to run cold. Damn it, could you guys just tone it down for a second? Jiraiya laughed. You think it's because he's special? Or because I have a connection to his family? Then he shook his head. No, it's nothing like that. It's just this prophecy I have to uphold is all. I continued staring at Naruto. Does that prophecy include lying to him about the one thing he deserves a right to know about? He sneered at me. Seriously, you're actually finding it in that bottomless pit you call a soul to care for the boy? I scoffed. I'm just saying. You were there when he asked about his heritage and you were silent knowing full well you could basically write a damn biography about the kid. He grinned. Just because I know something, doesn't mean it's my place to tell him. He replied. That's his battle, his path in life. And I have no doubt that he'll figure everything out on his own. He's not the kind of person that needs to be coddled. He turned to me fully. But speaking of paths in life, before we even got to this topic, I was going to tell you. You mean lecture me? He gave me an irritated look. All right, say it then, I said, exasperatedly. First off, that attitude is not attractive. He grumbled. I don't know who told women that it's cute to be sarcastic and rude all the damn time. And secondly, put some damn clothes on. I jerked away from him, struggling to pull the ends down on my shirt, skirt, towel, robe. Oh, whatever it was. If he didn't look at you when you were completely naked bathing last night, he's not going to look at you now. He went on. And thirdly, maybe if you knew how to cook and clean. Are you going to harp all over me or give me advice? I exclaimed. I was getting there. He shouted at me. I frowned, cupping my chin in my hand and resting my elbow on my knee. As I watched, the chakra inside Naruto and Sasuke looked less like its respective colors and more like that deep shade of royal purple. And as I looked further, inside Naruto's belly, there did seem to be a mass of chakra living there. But it, too, was turning purple instead of red. Like I said before, men like women who aren't dependent on them. How would you know that anyway? I asked. He gave me the strongest, "Are you an idiot?" look I'd ever seen in my life. Because I'm a man, he yelled. All of the women I've ever been attracted to have led their own lives and never looked to me on what decision they should make next. And is that why you're still single? If you weren't a small girl. He threatened. Okay, I get it. So I need to make my own decisions and lead my own life and stop following Sasuke around and blah, blah, blah. I frowned, digging my shoes into the sand. It's not like he'll remember me if I just walk off, though. Jiraiya laughed. That's another thing about women. You all assume men have the emotional range of a teaspoon. He said. If he was even worth shit in the first place, he'll remember you. And that's the best life lesson anyone could ever give you. Really. So, if I actually think about what I want to do with my life and go do it, that drive alone will attract the guy the first like. That's an interesting concept. So, what am I supposed to do on my path anyway? Karen asked. He gave me a matter-of-factly. Maybe train and get stronger. He said. I don't know what the hell it is with women and thinking they can just live their lives being damsels in distress. I returned his stare with a pissed-off look. Maybe it's because men always think it's their place to save women. I retorted. That's what's making us weak. He smirked, shrugging. Good response. I gazed across the waters, watching as the boys approached each other, slowly walking across the white sea foam. They're almost finished, I said, watching the pure purple inside of them. All that's left is, strangely, their foreheads burned brightly with their respective colors. Naruto reached for him and Sasuke, seemingly without a second thought, leaned toward him, allowing him to slide his hand into his hair. Their closeness is becoming unnerving. Jiraiya muttered as they pressed their foreheads together. They have to do that, I said, adjusting my glasses. That's the last step to fully merging their chakra. And as I said that, I saw it, blue mixing into red and becoming completely purple. The chakra that spread out from that point was calm. But a scary calm. Like a timid rage, a well of unspeakable potential. The hairs on my arms stood up. And this weird static went around, like small bits of lighting, making our hair lift off of our shoulders. I heard Orochimaru came last night. I spoke up. All this chakra they're expelling. It's going to attract him again. So what? Jiraiya asked. It's clear he knows a good deal about what's happening between them. He's probably somewhere close by, watching, using them as another one of his sick experiments. I wouldn't be surprised if your treason was all a part of one of his plans. That's not true, I replied. First off, how would he even have found us? You're a censor, so that makes you slightly arrogant in terms of searching ability. You think no one else can find anyone except you. Let me tell you, kid, Orochimaru has gone decades finding people with no problem before you turned up on his doorstep. He explained. If he wanted Sasuke, he would have just taken him right then and there. Orochimaru-sama's all about choice. I explained to him. He doesn't make us do anything we don't want. Jiraiya snorted. Is that why there are chains and locks on the doors? I'm serious. I told him. He actually wants us to choose him. I'm sure that's what he says. Jiraiya said, getting to his feet. But have you ever considered why he only goes after orphan children? He brushed the sand off his pants. With spending your days alone and starving as the only other option, there's only one choice a child like that can make. My mind flashed back to what Sasuke had said to me. Has he ever even given you a hug? I found myself reconsidering everything I'd built up around me to be the truth. But strangely, a smile spread across my face. I removed my glasses, watching my reflection in the shades. Maybe I really have been acting stupid. Hey guys, Naruto said running up the shore. Something really weird is going on. Something like what? Jiraiya asked. That kiss you guys almost had out there. Naruto's knees buckled and he hit the sand, pretending to writhe around on the ground and throw up. Sasuke walked up next to him, completely ignoring him, and addressed Jiraiya. Some kind of magnetic force. He said. I'm not sure how to explain it. Well, what can you do? Jiraiya asked. We're not really sure yet. Naruto said. We're kind of feeling it out. Picking it up as we go along. Sasuke's eyes locked on mine suddenly. I raised my eyebrows, unsure whether to keep his gaze or look away. Sasuke. I managed to say. Stay still, Karen, he said, raising his arm to me. I obediently froze, more out of confusion than out of actual obedience, but strangely, as I remained still, I felt weird. I kept Sasuke's gaze and he stared back at me, turning his hand over so that his palm was facing upwards. And then, suddenly, a pulse of static seemed to run down from his forehead to his arm. Something's really odd here. With my sensing, I could see his purple chakra, extending out toward me slowly, and then, like a glove, wrapping around me. And then the static around his arm solidified, turning into something like a glove of electricity rotating around his arm. I started panicking. Sasuke. What are you doing? I backed away, trying to break eye contact with him so that he would stop. Just relax, he said, walking toward me. Naruto and Jiraiya stood back, both wearing clueless expressions, and then, momentarily, it was like my ears were ringing. Slowly, Sasuke raised his hand up, and like I was being called, my feet left the sand. Excitement exploded onto Naruto's face. No way, he shouted. Only using 2 of his fingers at that point, he made me ascend further into the air, until I was a good 10 feet off the ground, and then smirked at Naruto. Catch her, he ordered. I panicked, a scream catching in my throat as I began to fall, but Naruto easily held his hand out. The lightning pulsated around his arm, too, and just as quickly he closed his fingers around air, catching me with nothing but pure willpower. What the hell kind of power did they harness? The thickening of space and time. Jiraiya remarked. Is that what you were practicing out there? Sasuke shook his head. That was more of a repulsion, attraction sort of thing. He replied. We can implode or bring in anything of around 30 meters to us and explode or push out anything within around 15 to 25 meters of us. I don't really get all the techie stuff. Naruto said, slowly bringing me down. But holding Karen like this just gave me an idea. Watch this. I sense the chakra around me condensing and compacting. Wait. Stop. Naruto cocked his palm back and launched me. Like a cannonball, I soared through the air, but while I moved, it was strange. Like every second I was taking flying, moving, soaring, wasn't a second, it was 5 minutes, or even an hour, or a day. Everything moved slowly. My eyes rose to the bird soaring through the sky over me, and the dazzling sun shining down, and I turned over slowly, coming to the sand. Down and down, but, as my face reached it, coming down onto it, almost to the point that my nose was only a centimeter away from hitting the sand, I froze. I turned my head, looking back at Naruto, who had both of his hands out pointed at me, seeming to be concentrating hard to keep me where I was. Sasuke raised his eyebrows. Even he looks impressed. Sasuke didn't say anything, but Naruto turned to him, responding like he asked a question. It's nowhere near as hard as that. He said. Here, try me. Without even waiting a millisecond, Sasuke grabbed Naruto under the arms, pulled him back and threw him out, launching him into the air so that he was soaring on the same path as I was, and with my back in the sand, looking up at him fly, I could see clearly. It's almost like they're slowing down time. And then, he fell, crashing down at full speed, but he put a hand out right before he broke his neck on the sand, and an enormous amount of chakra pushed out, blasting him back into the air, where he continued slowing time to pretend to fly. Woohoo! Naruto exclaimed. Come on, Ero Sennin, try it. Stop playing. You're going to make me die of a heart attack. Jiraiya grumbled. This is amazing. I heard a couple footsteps sound near me and moved my head right, coming face to face with Sasuke, who squatted next to me. Are you okay? I nodded slowly, taking in his slight head cock and small smile. How did it feel to fly? Flying. I raised my head, looking up again as Naruto ran toward a rock and front flipped off of it, spinning so that his legs flipped over him and he looked like he almost froze in air. I sat up, feeling a playfully attentive nature I hadn't felt in years touch me. Can I try again? He nodded, standing back as I got up and then raised both of his arms, which immediately began running with that rotating lightning current. Do whatever you want. I walked toward him, then, and broke into a run, jumping into his hand and pushing up off it. He flipped me up and I extended in a way that was like I was preparing to do a back flip, but as my back arched and I soared backwards, the time lapsed again. As I moved a centimeter per second, so slowly it looked like I was barely moving at all, Sasuke walked around me, bright hazy sun shimmering off of his black locks as he stood in front of me. He was upside down, from the point of view I was looking at. He reached out, allowing the back of my head to fall into his hand. I bristled, expecting the lightning going around his arms to hurt me, but I didn't feel it at all. It was almost like it compensated for the new matter he was touching and began to circulate around me, too. You're light as a feather, he said, gazing down into my eyes. My red hair whipped across my line of sight, shimmering as it fell below the sea line, and the sparklingly blue waves. And then the pressure folded, and exactly like a feather I lowered, sliding into the sand. Sasuke. I arched my head back, looking through my eyelashes as Sasuke walked over to Naruto and they both ran, doing normal jumps but flipping so far forward it was like the beach had zero gravity. And then I watched them, soaring over me, almost frozen in their respective front flips, and wondered. Maybe there really is more to life than being a ninja.